Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
I remember being in the hospital. Somebody had shared a book with me. I think the name of it is Girl, Wash Your Face. Wash your face. Take the first step. Look up. It's hard when you're in a depression. It's hard when you're in somewhere that you don't think you can get out of. Just take the first step.
Stuck in addiction, lost in despair, lonely, isolated, and then Jesus. Welcome to Brought Back to Life, a podcast where we explore how Jesus changes everything.
Hi, my name is Tricia. I'm from Eatonville, Washington, and my journey with Christ has, it had its ups and its downs. I came to know Christ when I was a little girl. I remember going to church. I remember, being there and loving all the things I was learning. And then I remember when I was a little bit older, I remember, a pastor, I was sitting in church and I was wearing makeup and I had a rock and roll t-shirt on, and the pastor looked right at me and was like, he just was not nice, and he said, basically he said, what you're doing is not going to get you to heaven. And in no uncertain terms, it was not nice. And I walked out of there and I left and I thought, okay, that's not for me. That's not what I want. And I stopped following Jesus. And I was probably 13 or 14 when that happened. I remember the church. I remember the place. I remember what I was wearing. And then when I was growing up, I had my own kids, and, you always want more for your kids than you want for yourself. And I had this wonderful neighbor that lived across from us in a duplex. We had duplexes. And she came over one day and said, hey, do you want to go to church with us? I was like, no, thanks though. And she said, okay, well, maybe I'll have you over for dinner. I was like, okay, cool, nice girl. Her name was Tricia, or is Tricia. And, a couple weeks later, she comes back over and says, do you want to go to church with us? No, thank you. I still don't. And, but she was a nice girl. We played, basketball with the kids. The kids were little, but we would play out in the, little basketball court. We'd stomp in mud puddles together with all of our kids. And then one day she said, hey, Trish, can I take your kids to church? And I thought, well, heck yeah, you can. That'll give me and my husband some time together. Take them. That's awesome. And so a couple weeks goes by and she's taking the kids to church every Sunday. And then on Wednesday nights, there would be something at church and she'd be like, can I take the kids with me? Sure you can, Teresa, thanks. More time for me and my husband. And then one day she came over and she said, Trish, the person that usually helps me at, I can't remember if it was VBS or if it was church, but she said, the person that usually helps me isn't able to come today. Is there any way you can help me? And of course I said yes, because she had been taking my kids to church so I could have all this time. And I was like, well, of course I'll help you. I'm a nice person. And so I went and I was putting little goldfish in cups or little graham crackers in cups for the kids. And, I just kind of stayed in the background, did what she needed me to do, was her little helper. And then one day she said, hey, Trish, the girl that's supposed to do, story time didn't come today. Is there any way you can do story time for the kids? And I thought, of course I can, right? I know Bible stories. I learned them before. This will be easy. And so I went in and I started reading Bible stories to the kids. And I remember reading stories and thinking, I remember this. I remember this when I was a little kid. I remember learning this in Sunday school or, whatever it was. I just thought, this is familiar to me. And then I remember reading a story and I thought, that goes with my life, or that makes me, it makes sense to me. And then, it went on and I just kept going. I did not give myself to Jesus in that moment. I didn't go to that church. I never went to a church service at that church. I remember I worked at a coffee shop here, very popular one. And I remember being at work, and this girl kept asking me to come to church. She says, come to our church. It's this cute little church on the hill. You'll love it. And I kept saying no to her too. And then one day I was like, I'm going to go try this church out. And so I went to church, and it was a little church on the hill. Now it's gigantic. But I remember walking in the door, and I remember the pastor hugged me when I walked in the door. And I thought, he doesn't know I'm not good. He does not know I'm dirty. He doesn't know this is not good. And I remember feeling so shameful for things that I'd done in my past. And walking in the church, and there was a lady at the front that I had this giant red hat. And, I sat down, and she jumped up and gave me a great big hug. And she's like, you're in the right place. This is the right place. And I was like, I remember crying because I thought, how does she know that I didn't think this was the right place, or I'm in the wrong place? How does she know? So that day I gave myself to Jesus. And, since then I've walked away, and I've come back. I think that people think you have to choose, and you stay for the rest of your life, and nothing's ever going to take you away. But we can choose. We have a choice. And this was back in 2000, I believe, that I started going to church again. And it was probably 2007, 2008 when I walked away. I was like, no. And it wasn't God, wasn't Jesus. It was me. And I was in a bad place, and I didn't know who to reach out to. I know now that I just needed to reach up. I just didn't do that. And then I came back, and I was like, I remember I think it was about 2010. I was going to church again. And I remember sitting in church, and one of the pastors, same pastor that I thought, he doesn't want to hug me. Same pastor, same guy. He's up in the pulpit, and he's talking, and he said, he goes, hey, who has, any, credits or anything from school that maybe you didn't finish your degree, and, who wants to complete their degree? And I was like, that's me. And so I started going to school, and I met a professor there. I met a professor, and he taught from the Bible. He made sure that we understood the Bible is for us to move through our lives. We need to read it. We need to understand it. And we need to, have that inside of us, right? If we are listening to what's in the Bible, we're reading what's in the Bible, we're studying what's in the Bible, the things that are going to come out of us are the Bible. And so I just really appreciate him very much for all of that. Just such a good man. And then I started searching for that retreat feeling, right? So nothing was good enough unless it was that retreat feeling. I had that, I needed that super high you get when you go to the retreat, and it's like the greatest thing in your whole world. Can't wait to get that. It's that high. And all I could think about was that high. And if I wasn't getting that high, it was the wrong place for me. Now, I went to church the last 2 weeks in a row. I went to a new church just not too far from me in Graham, and I love it. And the first time I went, I thought, they don't have that feeling. I don't have that feeling. Right. And then they were talking about money and how we spend our money. And same thing. If you have the Bible in you, you're going to show the Bible, right? If you're spending your money on garbage, like that's what you love. And, I spend a lot of money. I love to spend money. And just hearing the pastor talk about, money and where I spend my money, really made me think, what I'm saying is important to me by how I spend my money is not what's really important to me. It's my family. It's my friends. It's God. And I want to show that more. So I went back to church again last Sunday. I met one of my friends after church and we were talking and I was telling her, I've been looking for this retreat feeling, but it's not the retreat feeling that I need. It's the word all the time, not just when I need something. All the time. That's where I'm at right now. I started going to school. Well, you're going to get an emotion. I started going to school to do ultrasound. After my niece was born, my sister had a very difficult pregnancy, and the person that helped us know what was wrong with her was the ultrasound tech. And so after my niece was born, I wanted to go to school to do ultrasound. So I went to school, I got all of my prerequisites and was ready to go to school for ultrasound. I ended up doing like an externship just to learn about it, see what they were doing. I hated it. It was not for me. It hurt my shoulders. I don't have a poker face. I'm too emotional. So if there's something wrong, I'm going to cry. If there's something good, I'm going to smile. So it wasn't for me. And then I just didn't really know what to do with it. So then I had all these credits. I didn't know what to do with them. I ended up going back and completing my degree. A few years ago, I ended up in the hospital with COVID. I went to the hospital and I knew that I wasn't going to come home. I was dying. I knew I was dying. I had lost all bodily functions. I was not okay. And I went to the hospital and I wasn't ready to talk about this. But I went to the hospital and at that time, no one could come with you. So I didn't have my husband or my kids, my family, nobody could be there. So I'm in the hospital and I think I'm dying. This is it. And they come in and they say they're going to do an ultrasound on me because they want to check for blood clots. So this guy comes in. His name is Jimmy. This guy comes in to do my ultrasound. And he starts, he's talking to me and he says, mind you, I'm dying, right? I'm in the hospital. I'm dying. And this guy says, what's your passion? And I was like, my passion? Like, buddy, I'm dying. And he's like, yeah, okay. But, I just want to know, what makes you tick? What makes you happy? And I was like, buddy. And I said, you know what? I like to make people happy. I like to make people smile. I make crafts. I make these little gnomes and, I like to make people happy. And he said, he says, that's awesome. He says, do you sell them? And I said, yeah. So I told him all about it, whatever. I gave him all kinds of information. And I'm still like, dude, I'm dying. But cool. This is a great conversation. He goes, my passion is running. I like to run and I like to gather people. And he had this, he had a race that he did in Seattle. And so he was super excited about it. And we ended up, he was in my room for over 45 minutes. And he was just talking about what made me happy, what made him happy. And we connected. And since then, he ended up getting sick and he passed away. But he made such an impact on my life. And it was an ultrasound tech. It was some guy that came in my room in the hospital. But he was a person that was put here for a reason. He was in my room for a reason. He made a difference for a reason. And he touched a lot of people's lives. I'm not the only one. I went to his memorial service and there were just
I mean, people just kept coming and telling similar stories to what I was just sharing with you. I'm so thankful that I made it out of that hospital. I'm so thankful that I'm here today. I've made it a point to change my health. I take care of myself. I walk all the time. I exercise as much as I can. I eat healthy. I'm working so I can have more time with my grandkids and my husband and my family. And I just know, like, I'm here for a reason. I knew when I was in the hospital that there's a reason I'm here. And, maybe it's, I don't want to say just, but maybe it's to, just be that light when someone needs it. I don't know. I want to keep doing the things that Jimmy did for me. So I was in the hospital. I was by myself and, I had my phone and I was ridiculous. So sometimes, my family will still tell me sometimes they're like, Trish, you need to put your phone down. You don't need to put this on social media. But I put everything on there. I was like, I'm sick. I'm dying. Here you go. I'll miss you guys. Love you. They called it a traumatic brain injury because I didn't have oxygen for so long, like very low oxygen. And I had COVID pneumonia. And I remember being in the hospital and somebody had shared a book with me. And I think the name of it is Girl, Wash Your Face. And so I was listening to this book while I was in the hospital, and I hadn't showered in days and days, like weeks. I don't even remember. It was so long, and I felt so dirty. I just felt dirty, and I remember calling the MA in, and I said, I need to take a shower, and she said, honey, you can't even stand up. I said, I need to take a shower. I have to wash this off of me. I have to get rid of it. And she said, okay. So she helped me walk to the bathroom with a walker. And pretty much she was holding me up. And we got in the bathroom. And I remember, and she washed me. She washed my hair, she washed my body, she washed me. I couldn't do it. And then I remember I was like, do you have conditioner? And she was like, yeah, I can go find some. But I remember I was like, my hair is going to be so tangly and I need some conditioner, right? I just need something to soften, right? Like, I just remember that thought. So she got conditioner and I sat in there and I just let the water pour over me. And I just remember thinking, okay, something just turned, right? Something just changed. I'm not going to die anymore. I'm going to live. And so we went out. She got me back in bed. And that night, I remember I put my hair up in a stupid, bun on the top of my head. And I remember taking a picture, I washed my face. And then I would share with everybody, I washed my face. This is good. And then the next morning I woke up and I asked for a wash rag and a towel and some soap and, all this stuff. And so I'm in there and I wash my face. And then and chapstick, and I put chapstick on. And then I would put silly bows in my hair. I would just tie random things in my hair and I'd take a picture and I'm like, I washed my face. Here you go. Everybody has to wash your face. It'll make you feel better. That was just the day that I decided I was going to live. And then I came home, and when I was in the hospital and when I'm saying, I said, I washed my face and I was saying these words, I sounded like I had there was something wrong with my voice. There was something wrong with my words because my injury in my brain, it wouldn't let the words come out right. So I sounded very muffled, and people, maybe you could understand me, but it was very hard to understand. Yeah. Then I got my voice back. Watch your face. Take the first step. Look up. It's hard when you're in a depression. It's hard when you're in somewhere that you don't think you can get out of. Just take the first step. I decided last year that I was going to take my health into, I was going to take it to the next level. Every single day, I work hard to make sure that my health is my priority. And you have to take the first step.
Do you want to share your Jesus story or know someone who should? Let us know at comments@onpurposely.com. If you loved Brought Back to Life, support us with a 5-star rating and review.